Welcome back to Mambition. Woohoo!
Oh, that was calm and normal.
Hi,
everybody.
One day a week, you might just get some normal voice on here. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, everyone. It's Alex.
And Tiffany.
And we've got a guest for you today. We've got Ruth Wilson. No, not that Ruth Wilson. But a fantastic guest. Ruth is, for full disclosure, an old friend of mine. But she is also an experienced higher education professional. She spent 13 years in senior management roles. She set up the University of Sunderland's campus in London in Canary Wharf, and she's worked as Director of Student Support and Engagement at Leeds Trinity University. She's also, if you can believe it, got a PhD in international student recruitment. And since August in 2023, she's been the Vice Principal of John Snow College at Durham University, which is, she's described it as her dream role, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that later. And in her spare time, just to put it mildly, Ruth is a keen runner. If you consider she's done the London Marathon a mighty 7 times and the Great North Run 13, that's impressive. That's really, really impressive. And she was born and raised in County Durham, so we've got another northeastern voice on the podcast today, and spent 7 years working in London before she came back to the northeast after having her daughter Zoe, and her husband Andy, who we've been friends with for a long time, moved back to be closer to family after Zoe was born. And one of the things we're going to talk about today, she's currently attempting to raise £40,000 for mental health charities. How much have you raised so far, Ruth? Come on, we'll start with that.
So we're at nearly £36,000. So, and actually, I very deliberately say we, because while I think we're going to talk about the kind of 40k challenge, which was my slight brainchild, it has been a kind of huge effort of a lot of individuals sort of piling in and helping and coming up with ideas. So I always say we, even though I guess it was a mad idea of mine a few years ago. £36,000 in just over kind of three and a half years of pulling a challenge together. So really proud of that so far.
Staggering amount. It really is. And just before we sort of get into the conversation, what I did want to say was I've known Ruth that long. I mean, I think I've known you since I was about 18.
Yeah. Long time now. I was trying to remember kind of how long we've known each other. You know, when you've just, someone's always been it kind of in your circle. Yeah.
But she's one of those people who I wanted to have on the podcast because she just really, I'm going to make you blush here, Ruth.
Yeah.
She is one of those people who just always really amazes me with her drive, her seemingly boundless confidence, and just her ability to do big things and to kind of set off to do them like they're nothing. So hopefully we're going to learn a bit about confidence, drive and resilience from Ruth today.
Oh, no pressure.
No pressure at all.
I have no life lessons. You might want to wrap up my interview now.
Well, I think I when we spoke initially, Ruth, I thought what was interesting to me was that you said you're not the likely candidate for this type of thing. And I think a lot of people look at people who do run marathons and say, I'll never do that. So I'm interested to know, like, the backstory of that in terms of what is it that motivates you to do that? Because I can't imagine.
It's a good question, because I guess I would say, like, on every run that I ever do, or probably every kind of thing that I would say is a challenge that I do, there's a very large part of it where I go, why am I doing this? As if somebody else forced me to do it. And you very clearly sign up for these things and tick terms and conditions and things. And thank you for that introduction, Alex. It was really kind. But actually, I'm kind of laughing and smiling because I hear myself described like that, and I don't see myself as that person who's kind of confident or particularly motivated. But I think what I have is a version of myself that is those things, and essentially kind of have a kind of character. Like lots of us, I think, have a work version of ourselves, don't we? A professional version of themselves. I think I even have a kind of work voice. Like I was kind of just joking with you both there about my accent before we came on the podcast, and I'm kind of very conscious of having a very strong accent. And while I'm very proud of that Northeast identity, I'm conscious I have to make myself heard and make myself understood. So the concept of being described as kind of a motivated or a confident person, it kind of, it makes me go, am I? And I guess I am, because actually you can't run a marathon on a whim. You can't. Well, I mean, you could give it a go, but you'd not get very far. And the backstory is quite interesting to my first ever marathon. So I ran my first ever marathon in 2008. That's kind of a really long time ago now. And I essentially did it because kind of said to someone I was going to, and I said it as a non-runner, as genuinely as a person who at that point had not even, like, Couch to 5K didn't exist. There wasn't running apps and stuff like that. I think I owned maybe a couple of pair of fashion style trainers. I mean, they'd have been Converse, they would have been trainers. And I said it, and the person like laughed at me. I wasn't fit, I wasn't active, and kind of and it really, it was a burn. I was like, if I say I can run a marathon, I will run a marathon. And so, because I'm stubborn, I definitely, if you'd listed stubborn in your introduction, then I'd have gone, yep, tick.
You can't really say that in an intro to a guest.
No,
though.
well,
but yes,
no,
I would probably agree.
By the end of our chat, people will be like, yeah, she's definitely that. And kind of, I had a boss once who said, if I ever really need you to do something, I'll either challenge you and kind of go and make it a competition, or I would tell you you're not allowed and you'll go and do this. So I think I'm the youngest of three. I don't know if it's the kind of rebel child, but essentially that's how it started. Like, I'll prove to you that I can do it. And it was going to be a one-off. I was going to do one marathon. I raised some money for a charity I was doing some work for at the time. So I was kind of coaching some young athletes, I think as part of my Duke of Edinburgh at one point, and it ended up doing it for a while afterwards. So I would raise money for them. I would prove a point. I would run a marathon. And I hated every minute of the training, and I hated every minute of the actual first run. We got all the weathers. We started in sunshine. One point, April in London had some hailstone. That was pleasant. We got some rain, and then it's got sunny again. I ended up sunburnt and kind of wet. It was weird. But, and this is maybe where we get to the motivation bit, I really loved the big shiny medal at the end. And I was like, oh, I've never had one of these before. I should have got it out. It's in a frame. I could have got it out. And I think there was that element of being able to have that kind of, I did this, that kind of pride in yourself. And I mean, there's the old joke of like, how would you ever know if someone had run a marathon? Don't worry, they'll tell you straight away. And I became that kind of horrible person. It's like, well, when I ran the London Marathon, and so the Great North runs were kind of natural after that. I suppose if you've trained for a half marathon, I'm not pretending a Great North run is easy, but actually I got into kind of running then for sort of mental well-being. I realized you didn't have to do an extreme distance, but it definitely helped me feel well. I'm a morning runner. I'm an early bird, so actually if I run in the mornings, the day is better. Even if I hate every moment of the run. So I guess that's where the marathon bit started, and then I've kind of dipped in and out of that a lot over the years, and I've done my last ever marathon about 5 times. So people who kind of probably sponsored me and stuff were like, "Oh, I'm sure you've said this is your last one a few times." And again, kind of various different points in my life where I've sort of needed a challenge, or kind of wanted to get fit. I've been able to pick that back up. But the 40K before 40 has kind of been a beast. It's been a big old chunk of a challenge to take on, I think.
Yeah, because you've not just been running. And do you want to tell us a little bit about the background of the challenge before we get into what you've done and what your motivation was for it?
So I think it's now called the 40K before 40 challenge, but it didn't really have a name when it first started. So 6 years ago, actually 6 years ago this week, I lost a cousin in kind of in tragic circumstances, and we should always do the kind of little heads up that I am going to talk about someone's death by suicide not in any great detail.
So description as well.
Yeah. So I lost my cousin Jed to suicide, and genuinely, I kind of say this to people a lot. Like every time I say that sentence, I still go like, I am still no less shocked when I say that sentence come out of my mouth than I was when I took that phone call 6 years ago. And I genuinely think kind of a death by suicide it's a different type of ripple effect that it has. So all deaths are sad, but I think particularly as Jed was, we kind of had no inkling. Nobody even had any inkling that he was in kind of mental ill health, that he was struggling anyway, and we have kind of no further news on kind of where his life took him to that journey. So essentially no closure, no closure at all. And yet you just stuck after that. And you know, I almost felt a little bit kind of a bit like a grief thief, because I was like, look, I'm not his sister, I'm not his wife, I'm not his children, but actually we just found it was really, really, really hard to grieve. And my kind of go-to for lots of things, so the bad day at work, you know, the bad situation at home, is like I'll go for a run. And because I'd done runs before, I was like, I can't ask people to sponsor me anymore. Like they're done. They must be going, well, we've given our money for this charity and this charity and this charity. So I decided to do an ultra marathon, which, full disclosure, I would not recommend a marathon. And you'll notice in your little intro there, you didn't say, and has done 17 ultra marathons. I've done one ultra marathon. So that was kind of a 66-mile marathon that I physically really, really struggled with that. But in my head, I would raise a huge amount of money, and it would help. It would help towards this grieving process. And we did raise a huge amount of money, and I chose Mind as the charity because I essentially was going, I want them to put some money towards somebody else's family not feeling like we feel. It felt very natural. So I did that. Then got that out of the way, kind of genuinely said never again on the old marathons. And then there was that emptiness again. You know, the grief hadn't gone away. Shock horror. So I would do a few more things. So signed up to do what's called the London Classic. So that is the London Marathon, the Ride 100, which is a bike ride from London to Essex and back. And then I'm looking at Tiffany's face.
I'm looking at Tiffany's face here because she doesn't know about all of this.
Tiffany. And then the swim Serpentine, which is a 2-mile swim in the Serpentine in Hyde Park in London. So it's like a big stretched out triathlon. Yeah. So you don't do them all on one day. So they're kind of 3 big London events. And so
shows how little I understand about doing that sort of exercise.
That was kind of an interesting point when we were talking about motivation. So running, I was like, boom, run a marathon, you know, let's train for that. I didn't own a bike, so there was a classic again where I'd signed up to something. I didn't even have a bike, so I didn't have to learn to ride a bike, but I had to learn to ride a proper road bike, which was really terrifying. And I hate open water swimming, so push myself out of that comfort zone. So this is a long preamble. After those 2 challenges, there was quite a bit of money in the pot, and I was like, okay, right, I can't just keep doing these physical things. And then I had this kind of moment where I recognised, and it must have perhaps been coming up to a birthday, and I was doing that classic of going, oh God, only this many birthdays till I'm 40. Like, oh God, I feel of a certain age now. And I had a real grief moment where I suddenly went, yeah, but you're going to turn 40 actually, so you should be really grateful, because Jed isn't going to turn 40. And the kind of personal bit to me was that there was only ever 6 weeks between us. So Jed was 6 weeks older than me. So when we were little, he loved being 6 weeks older, and he would be like, haha, you're such a baby, you're so tiny. And actually that recognition of going like, I'm actually now, he's forever 33, and actually I next year will get this 40th, and we won't get that kind of moment together. And the irony being, I suppose I'd be loving now being the younger cousin. It would be great. I'd be like, ha ha ha, you turned 40 before me.
And I'm still in my 30s.
Yeah, I'm so young for those few weeks. And so that's where it really came for. I think there was about kind of £7,000 in the fundraising. And I recognised that, people had been so supportive and got behind the challenge that I could turn it into something bigger, and it become the 40k before 40. That was a really long answer.
No, I think it's really interesting because like for me, what comes out of it, Ruth, is you say, you know, that you've hated every minute sometimes of doing these things, which to me, I can only make myself do, you know, if I loved running, I could make myself run, but I don't, so I can't.
Yeah.
I don't know how you make it, how you sort of harness that drive to keep doing it when you're not enjoying it. Like, how do you make yourself continue through with something that you are not a big fan of?
Yeah, I guess I think probably in lots of things in my life, and this is very telling. That people that know me, Alex, you'll probably do another like. So like I'm loud, and I'm quite I'm loud, and the you know, opinionated, and the mouth will go. And I think with lots of these things, very much like that very first London Marathon, my mouth said something, and then my brain and my body had to catch up. So
Yeah.
you know, I kind of I was literally sitting at a computer one day saying, I've got about £7,000 in a couple of years. I've got this many years till 40. So if I raise that much every year, yeah, 40k is easy. And it was out there. And I'd kind of, before I knew it, there was an Instagram account, and I was signing up to other kind of physical events. And then you have these moments, and kind of you go, and well, for me afterwards, I go, why did I say I could do that? Oh, but I've said it now, so I'll have to do it. So I think lots of the motivation is like almost that self-accountability, or that sort of fear that I guess lots of us have, that people would kind of call you out on something like you said you were going to, so you'll have to do now. Yeah, and I mean, look, I'd be lying if I say that I hate every minute of every part of it, but I don't naturally enjoy running. I've always thought, you know, keep doing these things, and there'll be a day where you just find your comfortable pace, and you will just enjoy it. It's very rare that I go on a run and I'm like, I loved every minute of it. But I kind of recognize that I feel better after it now. So I guess there's that little endorphin rush will come. And then as the challenge has sort of snowballed, it's become something really different, actually. It hasn't just been me having to be sort of whingy and sweaty and swearing on an Instagram account going like, oh, it's long run day, please sponsor me. It's morphed into kind of social events and ability to get people together for them to kind of get something nice out of their fundraising. So I kind of recognize people can't just keep, especially the same people, can't just keep going on a fundraising platform and kind of going, oh, here's another £5-10 for what you've done. But actually, they happily will pay sort of £5-10 to come and see a band, or to kind of, you know, get together and do something socially. So I think sort of sprinkled between the crazy physical challenges has been
skydive. Didn't you skydive?
Yeah, I did a I did a 15,000 foot tandem skydive. I still struggle to talk about the skydive.
Did you enjoy that?
It was awful. It was it was the worst. Honestly, give me a marathon any day. It was the worst thing I've ever done. I've never been so scared ever in my life. And my husband really didn't want me to do it. He ironically, for a man who flies planes, is not comfortable with heights, and kept saying, yeah.
For the uninitiated, Andrew is a pilot, so a bit ironic that he is scared of heights.
Doesn't like heights, and he just kept saying, "Why would you jump out of a perfectly safe aircraft? Well, I don't do aircraft safe, sky, and the more we kept saying it, I was like, I think he's got a point. That was, the skydive was terrifying, and everyone said, oh, the adrenaline rush afterwards. I mean, hats off to people who make that their kind of recreation. It was so overwhelming, and you're in free fall for a minute, longest minute of my life. I felt like I was being squeezed, and I couldn't even scream. There was just no air.
That sounds scary. I think I would never do a skydive, I don't think.
Yeah. So I wouldn't recommend it.
I admire you for doing that. I think what I'm learning from me, you said a couple of things that I thought was interesting. I think I liked what you said about almost having a chip. Well, I would say like having a chip on your shoulder. starting off that journey. You know,
Yeah.
you project journey, you need to represent this him in a way through
Yeah.
your living, and that was what got you started. But what encouraged you to continue was that idea of the events, and it changed, right? The energy almost changed.
Yeah,
That
I
was-
think
yeah.
that's really fair, Tiffany. And actually, I think it's 2 years ago now that kind of World Suicide Prevention Day had this strap line that really stuck with me, and it was kind of hope through action.
Mm.
And what this has become is it's moved from a challenge that was very much about grief, remembrance, you know, trying to make sure no one else found themselves in a similar situation, to it being something really hopeful,
Yeah.
and it creating beautiful conversations and connections. The number of folk that I have kind of been at a St. Patrick's Night celebration, and you'd kind of have a quiet moment with someone, and they'd go, "This is my reality," and it wasn't necessarily their own mental health story. It was often the story of their cousin or the story of their friend or their partner. And I think what it's allowed me to do in my tiny little way, because they're a huge organization with many advocates, is kind of showcase the work of Mind, and kind of go, you know what, there's resources out there, and your funding is funding a website that you can look on 24 hours a day, and it will give you some links to something that might support you there. You know, there's they have a phone line in the same way that organizations like the Samaritans and Papyrus do. And what I'll never know is kind of how many people the sort of the web touched, but it touched a lot. And it's been that I've kind of gone, you can never get over or change the situation that happened, but actually you can take real hope from the impact that the significance of that then had. So and then here's an irony for it. I then end up having these moments of guilt where I go, you're getting this kind of positive feeling from something so tragic, but I've had a bit of a strong word with myself about that, because I think that's probably something we definitely do to ourselves as women, where we go, should I be enjoying this? Should I be having a nice time? And there's probably a whole other podcast on that. And actually, what I've definitely been able to say to myself recently is, you can hold your head high here. You can be proud of kind of, for whatever reason they started, what it has become, and the impact that it will have. I had a really nice call with Mind a few weeks ago, where they were able to share with me kind of the impact that amount of funding has on them as an organization, and what they spend that sort of donation through their volunteers on. And I mean, that was just like uplifting, heartwarming. They're the things that will probably keep getting me out on runs now on the morning, because actually you go, it had an impact, it did something. Whether that be the one person that reached out to me, or the big organization in the third sector who said, this is what we spent your money on. So
yeah. And so you've only got $4,000 to go as well.
Yeah.
Pretty
I mean,
amazing.
yeah, it's really fun. It's quite funny, actually. So it has definitely, I think, snowballed. I think, there was, after the big, I've got an Instagram account, I suddenly had this, oh my God, this is loads of money, like, and you've told people to do it. And, they'd be like, 500 coming in from this sort of thing, and 500, it's not going to add up. But I would say the last sort of 18 months, people have just, I think maybe as that you get closer to the total as well, so other people have suggested things. So friends have reached out and said, I've got a band, like, we'll put a night on for you for free. I guess 2 or 3 years ago I was having to write to bands going, can you put a night on, and any chance you can keep the price kind of down? So you of course you get that bit of organic and that snowballing. But yeah, the last 18 months, kind of 20 odd thousand pounds of that has come in that short of space of time. So that's felt like, whoa, like, and then you have these, we could keep going forever. No, we can't. We definitely can't. We'll definitely stop it at 40. So yeah, I think what was great was we could keep doing the little bits of ticking some fundraising off, but then I've had 2 or 3 kind of big ticket items. So we did this great night in a very local venue to me, and some local artists who now live kind of all over the country. They did a bit of a like reunion type event, so it was great. They brought all their friends and family, and I didn't necessarily even know any of them or many of them, including Cy King from the Hairy Bikers, who is kind of from Berkeley, where my mum grew up. So
I'm
that
shocked
was.
you're not giving a shout out to Berkeley Catholic Club there.
I know,
St. Catholic
like
Club.
to the club, the club. Yes, so most of the dues have been in kind of similar venue. So that, I mean, that was amazing, and then you get that moment where Si goes, "Oh, I'm going to give you 100 signed copies of the book because I think what you're doing is, and when you start a challenge, you don't know that you're going to have this kind of celebrity who helps you and endorses you and gives you something." So yeah, the 4,000 feels really nice. It feels really manageable, and technically, I'm not 40 till May 2025, so we've still got a good window to do that. But I'm now at that point where if anyone had ever run a marathon, if you've run the London Marathon, like the last mile, you can see Big Ben and you can see Westminster, but you have to go up that last mile, turn a corner, and it's a really long time till you can see the Mall up behind kind of Buckingham Palace. So in my head, I keep going, you think you're nearly there, but you kind of haven't turned that corner up the Mall yet, and you do have to get over the line.
From the one time I did the Great North Run, pretty much 20 years ago, that bit where you run down onto South Shields, that
you can
last
see the
bit
sea.
there.
Yeah.
You think you're there and you're not.
You're really not. You're
So
really
I get
not
it.
there. Yeah.
I'm keen to know. I think I've obviously been a mom as well. I don't know how you even. I think what I don't know how you balance it. But I'd love to know how your approach and everything you're doing impacts your daughter, and how talk more about that.
Yeah, I think look, that's kind of a big question in some ways. So I guess lots of my like kind of challengey stuff pre the death of Jed, I had all the free time in the world. I had a job and had quite a demanding job, but I didn't have a family. I kind of lived in central London, so had the ability to kind of go between long runs out in the streets, nice fancy gyms and stuff like that. I kind of didn't realize. I guess you don't realize how lucky you are in terms of the amount of free time you have.
Yeah.
And so then the kind of timing of becoming a mum versus Jed's death, they're like my world, those two things collided at almost exactly the same time. So my daughter was born in March 2018. Jed had died by August 2018, and I think I guess one of the things that again just sometimes pops into my head on that long run, or when you can't be bothered to do the next fundraising, is that Jed and I had been in touch. Jed and I lived 13 miles apart in London, and had been in touch and met up during the times that we both lived in London, and he had messaged me after Zoe was born to kind of arrange meeting up with his family. And at the last minute, I had kind of probably a new mum type problem and kind of can we rearrange? And we did rearrange, and that date was in my diary for a date after he died. And that really sticks with me, and I kind of always have this moment of going like, I should never have remembered meeting him, and by no way, shape or form do I think it would have changed the future, but it sticks with me that like, get out on that run because you need to raise that money so that someone else doesn't have an appointment in a calendar that doesn't get met. Wow. But I guess the convergence of new mum, central London, no family around, kind of grieving. As we've just said, Auntie, my husband, gets sent places and is sometimes here, is sometimes not. His company, helpfully, after his 10 days paternity leave, when he hasn't flown for 10 days, so we can max him out and send him to somewhere in France. I can't remember where now. 5 nights overnight, so I had brand new baby at home, literally on my own. I guess there's a bit of you have to you sink or swim, don't you, as a new parent? And I was going, I can do this. I've told everyone I can do this. I was definitely sinking under the surface, and I'm not telling anyone that I was. The stubbornness came back. So many people said to me when I found out I was expecting, "Oh, you're going to move back to the Northeast for your maternity leave?" And I kept saying, "Why? Why? I live in London. Why would I move back to the Northeast?" On reflection, they were going because it's going to be really tough and you're going to be on your own a lot of the time. Stubborn old Ruth was like, no, I'll be this glammy mammy living in central
I think
London.
we all have that idea though of like what it's like to have a baby versus what it's actually like.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the kind of the bits where those overlaps and the ability to then kind of talk to my daughter, it was like parenthood is in general, it was very much a work in progress. So there was a long period where I'd got back to running and I was out there and I was training, but I would try and do it to perfection. So I would get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, sneak out of the house, like as long as Andy was at home, sneak out of the house and run so that I could be home and then be that present parent, and she wouldn't have missed me. I mean, you've been out for a really long run, you're not that present, all you want is a coffee. But in your head, you're telling her I didn't miss a moment of that because she was sleeping and she didn't know I'd been out for a run. Of course, classically, you're tired and then you're probably not your best version of yourself that day. And I guess same with work. I would never want to look like anything had changed. So I would do the kind of, I'm absolutely fine, I'm okay here, and I'd be going in earlier or coming in later, but then trying to fit everything in, sneaking out with the laptop under my arm years before we'd done anything like home working, but going, I'll catch up on all of that after she's in bed. And again, kind of to refer back to your little intro there, Alex, where you kind of say, look like I'm making things easy. I wasn't doing myself any favors because it was fake. I was making my life harder to try and look like nothing had changed, everything was fine. And I think that's probably where I guess in some ways I'm kind of regretful of that, because I maybe should have been more authentic and I should have been saying, something's got to give here. Actually, I'm not managing it all because I'm not sleeping, because I'm getting up crazy early, or I'm working till really late at night. I think as Zoe's got older, I think probably through both the kind of keeping fit and keeping healthy, that means I've got a bit of balance there, more around like I feel well, and also she's not a tiny baby, so she's not as much of a sleep thief anymore. But I've reassessed. I've definitely reassessed. I've gone, I can't keep trying to be this perfect version of something that I never was anyway. And also, someone said to me a few years ago, and I don't know if I like this phrase, but it's stuck with me and has impacted my behavior. But you get 10 good summers with them. And I said, sorry, what? And they were like, well, the first few years is like, it's hard work, isn't it? It's just all consuming. And it's like, you're in there and you're like, I'm keeping you alive. Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm keeping you alive, and I'm trying to kind of, spin some plates. And then I definitely kind of say, and maybe this is good news for you guys, I found 3+, which just stuff got like just more entertaining. I felt like I had my brain back a little bit. They could interact with you more. Obviously, sometimes it's cheeky, but but you start seeing their interest and their personality, and you share them. So this 10 good summers is that kind of 3 or 4 up till they're in that kind of teenage period, when then they don't necessarily, we're in this phase now, aren't we? Where like we are their heroes. They're like, you are a bit, and we're not forever. So I hate that, because I hate this 10 good summers. You've got, but it made me go, this little person is only little for a short amount of time, and you've actually put so much into like having this career and trying to be this version of this fundraiser, and those things actually can come and go, but actually that there is a finite amount of time where being the kind of mom is as kind of fun as it is at the moment. And 6 is a really good age. So Zoe is now 6, and she's everyone thinks their own child is kind of X, Y, or Z. Zoe's really thoughtful. She's thoughtful, and she asks the big questions, which really? I don't know the answers sometimes. But what it means is you can kind of have quite a mature conversation with Zoe, and you can check her understanding on that. So sometimes I'm careful, because I'll be like, so we're fundraising for this, like, Mammy had a cousin and you didn't meet him, and we were able to have a really sensitive conversation with Zoe around about a person taking their own life due to some circumstances that she became aware of from a peer of
Okay.
hers. So while that was again such a heartbreaking moment, but it was important because she had a friend who was experiencing loss, and her school were excellent. Her school were really excellent in the way that they spoke to the young people about that. So actually, it's provided a vehicle to talk about everything from, you know, the darkest days of depression to the positivity of doing good through charity, to the feel good feeling of exercise, to, you know, how important that is. Yeah,
the impact of what you're doing and your journey on her. I really like that, because I think you can't always shield children from everything.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a balance, but it sounds like she's had a sense of maturity, and her perspective of life will be incredible because she's seen you do these things, and she's part of it in a positive way.
Yeah, and I think they do, you know, children, and because they have such a almost a kind of beautiful way of looking at things, they've got that kind of unfiltered way of kind of saying things. So Zoe's quite, she'll say things that you realize it's your own words kind of shared back to you, but it's her interpretation of them. So she did this quite funny little moment the other week, and we were heading off on holiday, and we'd been talking about what we would do, and we were going interrailing, so it was quite a different type of holiday for us. We were saying, so there'll be lots of moving around and we'll see lots of different things. And she said, so if we're somewhere and I see something that I really like, are you and Dad going to be saying, come on, we've got to get to the next thing that we see? Can we stop? And can I say, I've seen something that I like? And I said, oh, that's a great question, because yeah, like we don't, I mean, we're not pretending we know everything. We've got a bit of an itinerary. And she said, so I could be walking down the street and I could say, there is the cutest dog in the world. Can I go and have a little look at him? And I said, okay. And she said, and just like for you, Mammy, if you were walking along, I'm laughing. And she went, and you saw something that was about mental health, you could say, I'm going over to look at that because I'm really interested in that. And I was like, I thought you were going to say like shoes or handbags, but
like wine.
Wine. Like surely she'd have picked wine.
Your priorities, but that's amazing.
But I thought, well, actually, maybe it's not a bad, you know, rave review for my child. Like, my mum's really interested in mental health. I said, well, that wouldn't sound too bad if she repeats that at another occasion.
But there's a lot of research that, you know, even now, I think young girls are the most vulnerable in our society to mental health and suicide and depression. So if Zoe at the age of 6 gets it or has an idea, or, you know, is around that and what you're doing, I think she would grow up and be super incredible.
Well, let's and I guess that's what all we can hope for our children, isn't it? We're kind of, are we giving them the right input? Is it producing the right output? And if not, are we continuing to have conversations with them that kind of go, how did that make you feel? What do you think about that? Because their worldview is untainted, but it's so different to ours. It is, and I think even the 30 odd years since I was Zoe's age, like that has been a big old 30 years. And and the way anyone would have, if they'd have talked to us at all about some of those things, the way they would have talked to it, it would have been a bit like, you know, it would be very sanitized, or it would be keep the children out of it. And I'm not sure that was, and you know, for any, you know, negative reason. People just didn't know that we should have talked about those things. So that you've got to hope that there's kind of an arc now in kind of mental health intervention versus, you know, we need a downward trajectory in things like suicides. We need people to recognize that there's a whole conversation going on there now. So hopefully this generation will be the generation who are able to have those conversations in a different way, and you know, put suicide prevention at the front of their kind of minds.
Yeah, I think, sorry, go ahead, Tiffany.
No, let's go.
I was just going to say, so when we were young, it was very much taboo to talk about mental health. It was, they would have talked about it in hushed tones, and they'd have used sort of euphemisms. I think when they were talking about it, they wouldn't have been very direct about it. And I think that doesn't help children from my point of view, because they still understand something's wrong, but they need to hear it in kind of simplistic terms that kind of fit their age perspective, but that don't sugarcoat it or try and hide what it is. Because, you know, I'm thinking this isn't to do with mental health, but once when I was little, I said I was watching the news with my granddad, and they mentioned that somebody had been raped, and I said, "What does rape mean?" to my granddad, and I knew from his reaction that I wouldn't ask anyone else again what that meant, because he was like, I think you better ask your mum, and clearly didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But from that reaction and that pulled back reaction, I was like, well, that my takeaway from this is I'm not going to ask my mum. I'm not going to ask anyone what it means. And I think that defensiveness around mental health stops children from then asking the question.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's kind of in the same way that I kind of try and expose Zoe to things in my career in a certain way, and that actually, you know, we have it started as a bit of a joke, but it's not a joke really anymore. That Zoe and I will talk about jobs, you know, particularly 5-6-year-olds. Every day they're gonna be a different thing. Or Zoe's gonna be like all the things. Like, I'm gonna be a pilot who's an actress, but who also is a professional dog walker. And then she panics that she's offended me, because she goes, "Oh, but also I think being like a vice principal might be quite a good." I'm like, you find. She's like, I know I picked pilot first. I'm really sorry. But I think what's really interesting is being able to have conversations that, I guess, again, Matt, I don't remember really much what you're going to do when you grow up, and I'll go, you can be, in theory, whatever you want to be, but there'll be a route to get there. So we'll have the conversations about, you know, working hard and trying your best. And, you know, we have this joke in our family that I say, what's the only thing a girl can't do? And she's like, they can't do a stand-up wee very easily. Because fundamentally, you know, there's me kind of wanting to instill that kind of challenge and that patriarchal view. And I do think we are bringing up a generation who are just, and I use this word in the purest and the way I think it should be used, but in a much more woke way. And I think woke's not a bad thing. I would love people to describe me. They are open-minded, and they are a broad church, and they are kind of going, what matters to you can matter to you, and things can matter to me, but actually we're going to be respectful of one another. And I think what's really, really beautiful is the kind of way I see her interact around issues on gender and sexuality and mental health. And it's a beautiful time to be a child, because actually those conversations, like you say, the hushed tones, don't ask ever again. That was my reality. And I just think, you know, hopefully we're on that kind of, like I say, that crest of a more positive wave for young people being able to have conversations and ask questions, and that will inform their future careers as well. They'll be questioning what they want to do and how they do it, and
challenging what society says they can't do, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And look, they're going to graduate if they choose a route of things like higher education, but what I mean by graduate is when they become adults into jobs that really fundamentally right now don't exist, because, you know, the kind of world of work is changing so quickly. You know, I one of the greatest days every year for me. I love a graduation, and obviously working in higher education, I go to lots of them, but I never get bored of graduations. They're just, you know, they're the pinnacle of like 3 years, in most cases, like blood, sweat and tears. And because of the roles I've done in HE in the past, I've kind of seen all of those things. I've seen students on kind of the lowest days, but when I see that moment for them where, you know, the parents and the family and the guardians are there, essentially they're just my favorite days. But what's been beautiful since I've taken my most recent role is I'm doing quite a lot of work to make sure we've got quite a sort of productive relationship with our alumni network. So I'm already doing a lot of work with our most recent graduates, and the jobs they are going into are just, you know, absolutely blowing my mind, because I'm like, I wouldn't have even thought, not only would I not have thought to do it, but, you know, the job didn't exist, but, you know, everything from like kind of brand managers for big organizations in like ice cream, but then there's all these social media and tech jobs that didn't exist, and lots of them that didn't exist when they first started university. So that, I mean, that definitely feeds back into my conversations as a mum as well, where I'm like, guess what so and so is doing, or and again, I think that gives you the ability to just say, like, the world is your oyster. Yeah.
I love that.
And I think I can do a lot of my so in the past it was about my ambition and it was about my career and I will get this next job. Actually, I think now I've got that ability as a parent to be ambitious for my child as well. I think it offsets my own ambition, that I'm like, maybe you've had your moment, maybe now it's time to try and just be that voice of reason and that guide. I'm trying also not to be the pushy mum, and not that like do everything and try everything, because not everything is for them either.
No, I love that. The balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think as well, there's the difference between being pushy and fostering their own ambition. And it sounds like you're doing that, of encouraging her to, you know, really think outside the box, consider all options, and not think, you know, we've talked about this before, Tiffany, haven't we? Of like, there's been often a kind of culture of, oh, those jobs aren't for me,
aren't for girls, or not for me, or not for
aren't for people from normal backgrounds. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's an important conversation, especially in a world where you want your life to mean something for your children. I think it's about every generation getting better. So that's been interesting. But I have one final question. For someone who's obviously, high performance in terms of, your resilience, your grit, your determination, I'd love to talk about like self-care. What does that look like for you? Like, how do you take time off from everything? Because, how do you like avoid burnout and look after yourself? How do you find that time?
Yeah, I think so. If I'm very honest, I'm rubbish at it.
Okay.
I'm really, really rubbish at the old self-care, with the exception of, like, I love this is so stereotypical. I love like an hour getting my nails done. I love like stuff like that. I'm a bit of an audiobook fiend, because essentially postpartum I either became too lazy or had the inability to concentrate on physically reading a book. I do love an audiobook, and
I'm a champion of audiobooks.
Yeah, I can definitely lose myself in that, but I have to kind of force myself to do that, to kind of go, stop scrolling, stop watching garbage on television after they've gone to bed, and like do something a bit more mindful, like listen to an audiobook. The other thing I'm kind of a work in progress on is like, almost, because my life is often like a military operation of like, slot for that, fit that time in, like, be good mum for this hour, do this work for this hour, is kind of be less guilty about scheduling a bit of time for that. Because look, I will be very honest, I have absolutely faced burnout, in my previous role before I came to my role back in Durham. That was very open about kind of suffering workplace stress, and throwing in getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to run, to then drive to work in another city. And then I had a really high kind of, I would say, high stress job because of what I dealt with, but actually I was probably already in that kind of stress response going into those situations anyway. My adrenaline was probably through the roof, because I was a working mum who always felt like they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I've done that burnout probably a bit too extreme. Classic, I do all things too extreme. But ended up unwell. Like, really, I'm really open about that, and kind of suffering migraine, sleeplessness, and things like that. So I think when you've pushed yourself to the edge of that, in your recovery, you absolutely have to commit to going, you can't go there again, or just get more self-aware of when you're heading towards that. So I'll have moments now where, particularly if I'm under pressure, I'll go like, come on, like, don't go down that route again, but also, is it like make or break now, or are you just conditioned to go, this is a crisis? And I think I'm much better now at the, like, put a pin in it before it becomes a crisis, and go, you don't have somebody on an operating theatre table here now. It is, what you do now is not life and death. It's going to have impact, and it's important. So in some ways, again, full circle conversation, much like I've got to the point now where this kind of 40k challenge has become something more hopeful and more positive. I kind of go, actually getting to that point of burnout, while it was absolutely awful at the time, and that, you know, that those feelings of being a terrible colleague because I wasn't well, being a terrible mum because I was just not the version of myself that I like to be. I mean, goodness knows what version of wife I was, because my long suffering husband was probably trying to do like looking after me and looking after child. But I think being able to take the positivity from, you're not in that space now, and you must commit to the self-care. So it's more audio books, it's like fresh air as well. It's fresh air that's not a run. I love just a you know, 20-year-old Ruth would have gone, you're just going for a walk, but actually, you know, an hour to yourself just to go for a walk. Like 20-year-old Ruth did not know that was fun, but that is fun. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you for being so sort of unflinchingly honest. You know, they're saying that you're not good at self-care. I think it's such a trend now for everyone to kind of talk about all the stuff they do to look after themselves and stuff like that. And I think the honesty around as well, trying to present that front of perfection and that nothing's changed when you go back to work. I think so many people are going to empathize and really, really feel that, because I think that's such a common thing. People don't want their colleagues to think motherhood's changed them. And actually, that's impossible. Like, it's the biggest, like, most life-changing event you're going to go through.
Yeah.
Of course, you're going to be different and have different priorities, and you're running on no sleep. And I think that hopefully these conversations open people's eyes to that, that you don't have to present as the same as you were before you went off. It's okay actually to say, I was off 18 months. Been off 18 months. Can you remind me how to do that? Instead of being like, I'm going to pretend I know how to do it. Like, just ask. And hopefully that normalizes it a bit.
But also as well, I think there's lots of, like, for me, there's lots of work for employers and colleagues to do as well, because, you know, you're both working mums. Like, in general, we are the best kick-ass kind of multitaskers who can be, you know, I think we've talked in the past, haven't we, about being just in time. And I used to say, I'm always that just in time person. I'm like, it gets done. Actually, you know, if you want to kind of tap into some underused skills, kind of recognize the skills that working mothers have to do a bit of multitasking and take the pressure off in other areas. Go, do you know what? Because I know you'll absolutely be able to get that done. Like, don't worry about what time you started and you presented. Do you know what I mean? Do what you need to do so that you can. So if it is, you know, I used to hate. And it's stupid. I never thought I would. I used to hate how rarely I did the school run. I always felt like it was like a grandparent job, because I invariably would have accepted either online meetings during the pandemic, or was heading to kind of commute down a job. I'd invariably accepted an early meeting and then and I was like, why am I going? I should be doing the schoolwork. But actually, nobody should have been asking me to be at a meeting. And they should have been going, you need to do that bit so that bit's closed off in your brain there. Your child's now safely somewhere. And then you can come and have that time and be your job. But I'm going to get on my soapbox now. But,
I think we're all up on that soapbox together.
Yeah.
Work does need to change to enable real equality, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
We've put the world to rights.
We have, haven't we? Yeah.
Where can people find you, Ruth? Like, if you want to connect with you, or, you know,
or give you some of your 4K.
Yes, if anyone wanted to give some of my 4K. So we do have an Instagram page. So it's just literally 40k before 40. And hopefully it'll be very obvious it was us. It's very Mind branded. Mind as an organisation have been incredibly supportive of the charity. We do have a Just Giving page, which is justgiving.com team 40k before 40. Professionally, and kind of really comfortable with kind of people reaching out via LinkedIn and stuff as well. I've kind of had a weird old journey through higher education management, and I do share I do that bleed of like personal into professional on LinkedIn. So I do share updates of the 40k challenge, because in general it's been lots of colleagues and connections that have been supportive of that as well. So yeah, I'm out there on the old social media. But thank you for inviting me along for the conversation as well. It's and your very kind intro, Alex. That was
You're
very
welcome.
kind of you to say lots of that. And for not adding stubborn to the list.
We'll add it now. Thanks to very stubborn Ruth Wilson for joining us.
And not that Ruth Wilson. But you might get loads of listeners to this podcast if you don't tell them it's not that Ruth Wilson.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ruth. It's been such a pleasure listening to you.
No, my pleasure. Yeah. Thank you very much. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, she's just disappeared.